The Great Pyramid's sides face true north with an error smaller than a fraction of a degree. That level of precision, achieved over 4,000 years ago without computers or steel, presents one of history's most captivating puzzles. This is the story of how ancient engineers achieved precise orientation in monumental construction. By the end, you will understand the simple yet brilliant toolkit that let our ancestors align stone circles, temples, and pyramids with the cosmos itself. We will uncover how they used the sun as a compass and the stars as a fixed guide, transforming raw landscape into sacred geometry. What does it say about a civilization that built its greatest monuments in conversation with the sky? That single moment of observation was everything. Picture a Neolithic farmer standing in a field just before dawn on the longest day of the year. The air is cool, the world is silent, and then a sliver of brilliant light breaks over a distant notch in the hills, perfectly marking the solstice sunrise. For that farmer, this was not just a beautiful spectacle. It was a direct message from the cosmos, a promise of returning warmth and a guide for when to plant and when to harvest. The heavens were speaking, and our ancestors were determined to answer back in stone. This profound connection between sky and earth is the foundation of all ancient alignment. Precision was never about vanity or mere technical challenge. It was a sacred act, the ultimate way to physically anchor their world to the perceived order of the universe. By aligning a monument to a specific star or the solstice sun, they were building a permanent bridge between the human and the divine. These structures became far more than buildings. They were colossal calendars tracking the seasons with unmoving stone. They were spiritual conduits where the light of a god might touch the earth at a prophesied moment. And they were undeniable symbols of power, demonstrating a priestly or royal class's privileged knowledge and their command over the natural world. As Archaeoastronomer Dr. Giulio Magli explains, to orient a pyramid precisely north was to make a statement. It said, "We understand the rules of the cosmos, and we have the will to impose that order here on our terms." This deep, multifaceted motivation, part practical, part spiritual, part political, is what drove engineers across continents and millennia to solve the same puzzle. They were not just building walls, they were weaving their culture into the very fabric of the sky, setting a challenge for the ages that we are still working to fully understand. That priest standing in the cool desert dawn held no compass, only a long, straight rod. His task was deceptively simple, yet its outcome would define a civilization's greatest work. He would watch the sun. Across the ancient world, from the deserts of Egypt to the plains of England, the sun was the primary guide, the most reliable clock and compass humanity ever knew. Its journey was not random. Every year, it would reach a northernmost point on the horizon at the summer solstice and a southernmost point at the winter solstice. The genius of early engineers lay in patiently mapping these extremes to find the exact center, the true east and west. They did this with tools of elegant simplicity. One method, known to many cultures, involved a vertical rod called a gnomon, the ancestor of all sundials. An observer would mark the tip of the rod's shadow at different times of day. But to find true cardinal directions, they needed to think in terms of a whole year, not just a single day. They would track the shadow's farthest reach at sunrise and sunset over many seasons. Imagine drawing an arc in the sand for the winter solstice shadow and another, wider arc for the summer solstice shadow. The precise midpoint between these two extreme points gave them a perfect east-west line. A line drawn perpendicular to that, north-south. This technique, sometimes called the Indian circle method, required immense patience. It was a project that demanded observing the sun's slow dance across the horizon for an entire annual cycle. But once that baseline was established and permanently marked with stone stakes or trenches, it became the unshakable foundation for everything that followed. This solar geometry is etched into the very bones of Giza. The Great Pyramid's sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with breathtaking accuracy, an error of just 3/60ths of a degree. At the Temple of Karnak, the massive axis was laid out so that on the summer solstice, the rising sun would shine directly down the central corridor to illuminate the inner sanctuary, a moment of divine connection engineered into stone. These were not lucky guesses. They were the result of generations of accumulated sky knowledge, translated into terrestrial perfection through a profound understanding of solar cycles, long before the mathematics to formally describe those cycles even existed. The sun provided the blueprint, and human ingenuity provided the unwavering hand to trace it onto the earth. But the sun was only half the story. When darkness fell, a different kind of precision became possible. The night sky offered a grand, slow-moving clockwork of stars, and ancient astronomers learned to read its face with astonishing accuracy. They understood that while most stars rise and set, some circle a fixed point in the sky, the celestial pole. By tracking the rotation of these circumpolar stars, they could pinpoint true north with a reliability that rivaled the sun. This was not about a single bright star, but about mapping the center of the entire sky's rotation. Today, we use Polaris, the North Star, as our guide. But 4,500 years ago, when the Great Pyramid was being planned, the pole star was a different light entirely, a star called Theban in the constellation Draco. An Egyptian astronomer would have watched Theban trace a tight, never-setting circle around the true celestial pole. By bisecting that circle, just as they bisected the sun's path, they could establish a north-south line of incredible exactness, one that could be checked and refined over countless clear nights. This stellar method required a profound, generational memory of the heavens. It was knowledge preserved not in books, but in stories, rituals, and careful observation passed from master to apprentice. We see this deep sky wisdom echoed in other cultures. The Maya, for example, meticulously tracked the cycles of Venus, the morning star, which they associated with war and divinity. Certain Mayan structures are aligned to its extreme rising and setting points on the horizon. Others seem oriented toward the delicate star cluster of the Pleiades, which marked important times in their agricultural and ceremonial calendar. For these builders, aligning a temple with a specific star or planet was an act of cosmic synchronization. It meant the building itself participated in the eternal order, becoming a terrestrial anchor for celestial power. This was architecture as a dialogue with the universe, a way to ensure that the rhythms of heaven and earth resonated as one. So we have two master keys, the sun by day and the stars by night. But knowing where to point is only the beginning. The real challenge, the one that separates an idea from a monument, was transferring that celestial bearing down to the ground with unerring accuracy across miles of uneven terrain. How do you take a line drawn from the stars and etch it into the earth at a scale of pyramids? Yet knowing a star's position in the heavens is one thing. Transferring that exact line down to a rocky, uneven construction site is another challenge entirely. This is where ancient engineering moves from celestial observation to terrestrial mastery. The tools for this task were not complex machines, but objects of profound simplicity, harnessing the most reliable force on Earth, gravity. The first was the Plumb bob, nothing more than a weight tied to the end of a string. In the hands of a skilled builder, this humble tool became a direct line to the center of the earth. Suspended from a fixed point, the weighted string would hang perfectly vertical, pulled straight down by gravity, creating an unwavering reference line. This true vertical was the cornerstone for everything that followed. But a vertical line alone cannot level a foundation that must stretch for hundreds of feet. For that, they paired the Plumb bob with another ingenious device, the A-level. Picture a simple wooden frame shaped like the letter A with a crossbar at its peak. From the exact center of that crossbar, a plumb line was hung. When the two legs of the A-frame were placed on a surface, the builders would adjust the ground beneath them until the hanging plumb line aligned perfectly with a mark at the frame's center point. When that alignment was achieved, the crossbar was perfectly level. By repeating this process across a vast site, moving the A-frame from point to point, they could map out an entire plane of flawless flatness, a perfectly level canvas upon which to draw their celestial blueprint. Think of the foundation of the Great Pyramid, an area covering over 13 acres. The variation in level across that entire stone platform is less than an inch. This was not an accident of geology. It was the meticulous result of countless iterations with A-frames and plumb lines, a patient, physical process of making the Earth itself conform to an ideal plane. With a level foundation established and true verticals marked, they could then project their astronomically derived north-south line across the site using long, taut cords. These cords, stretched between vertical stakes set by plumb bobs, became the literal lines on the Earth, the ink with which the pyramid's footprint was drawn. The beautiful universality of this toolkit is a testament to its power. From the engineers of ancient China laying out symmetrical cities, to the builders of Mesoamerican pyramids aligning with Venus, the same principles appear. Gravity does not change, and a weighted string will always point down. By mastering these simple truths, our ancestors built a bridge between the infinite sky and the solid ground, turning cosmic alignment from a visionary idea into carved stone. But even with perfect lines and a level base, another monumental question remained. How do you move from a plan etched in the dirt to a mountain of stone and ensure that every single block for thousands of courses continues to point exactly where the first one did? Water became their mirror and the Earth itself their drafting table. While plumb lines gave them perfect verticals, ancient engineers faced the immense challenge of projecting straight lines across miles of undulating terrain. Their solution was to look not just to the sky, but to the landscape, harnessing its most stable and reflective features with brilliant practicality. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the vast rectangular moats surrounding the temple complex are not merely for defense or grandeur. They are precise instruments. On the morning of the spring equinox, an observer standing at the western entrance can witness the sun rise directly over the central tower, its reflection perfectly mirrored in the still waters of the moat. This alignment was no accident. The builders used the water's surface as a flawless horizontal plane, a giant natural spirit level that could extend their sightlines over distances impossible to achieve with simple cords. By constructing these massive reservoirs, they created a stable, reflective canvas against which to measure the sun's precise position. This principle of using water as a tool for alignment appears across cultures. In the flat deserts of Egypt, long, shallow canals filled with water could serve a similar purpose. An engineer could sight along the perfectly flat surface of a canal to establish a dead-straight baseline for miles, correcting for the subtle curves of the land. The water, seeking its own level, provided a reference line that gravity itself had drawn. Some researchers, like engineer Christopher Dunn, have proposed an even more sophisticated application. They suggest that long, narrow channels filled with water could have been used as primitive but highly accurate theodolites. By observing the reflection of a specific star in the still water at both ends of such a channel, builders could measure precise angles relative to the horizon, effectively turning a trench of water into a giant protractor. This deep integration with the environment represents a form of ancient geodetics, the science of measuring and representing the Earth. It shows a mindset that saw the natural world not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a partner in construction. A river was not just water, it was a ready-made straight edge. A still pond was not just a resource, it was a celestial observatory. By listening to the land and using its properties, the reflectivity of water, the flatness of a salt pan, the consistent line of a distant ridge, these master builders performed a kind of conversational engineering with the planet. They asked the earth for its truths, like where true level lay, and then used those truths to inscribe their own visions upon it. This harmony between human intention and natural law is what makes these sites feel so profoundly rooted, as if they grew from the ground rather than being placed upon it. Yet, even with the sky mapped and the land measured, the final and perhaps most demanding test of precision was still to come, a test that would unfold over decades and involve moving mountains, one stone at a time. The final test of alignment was not in the stars but in the pull of a rope, on the Giza plateau. As the first light of dawn touched the leveled foundation, a team of specialists would take their positions. These were the harpodonapti, the rope stretchers, and their simple tool held the secret to squaring the circle of the sky onto the earth. Their ceremony was a blend of sacred ritual and rigorous mathematics. With solemn focus, they would drive a stake into the ground at a marked point. A long rope, meticulously knotted at precise intervals, was then looped around it. A second stake was placed 12 knots away and the rope pulled taut. A third member of the team would then take hold of the rope at the third knot, while a fourth held it at the seventh knot. On command, they would pull, stretching the rope into a perfect triangle. When the distance between the third and seventh knots measured exactly 5 knot lengths, they had done something extraordinary. They had created a perfect right angle using a 3-4-5 triangle, a Pythagorean triple, millennia before the Greek philosopher was born. This was not theoretical geometry. It was geometry you could stand inside, the very shape that would define the corner of a pyramid. By repeating this process from each baseline, the rope stretchers could map out a perfectly square foundation, hundreds of feet on a side, with an accuracy that still defies belief. The knotted cord was their calculator, their theodolite, and their sacred text. Different knot sequences could generate other perfect triangles, allowing them to translate complex astronomical angles into physical layouts on the ground. This practical application of mathematics was the indispensable link between the celestial blueprint and the terrestrial monument. It transformed the abstract line of a star's path into the immovable right angle of a limestone block. In cultures from the Indus Valley to Mesoamerica, we find evidence of similar rope techniques for surveying land and aligning structures. The cord was more than a tool, it was a symbol of order itself, stretching the invisible laws of the universe into the visible world. With the foundation perfectly square and true, the monumental task of rising toward the stars could finally begin, stone by heavy stone, each course a new test of the builder's unwavering commitment to precision. The Great Pyramid stands as the ultimate test of these ancient techniques, a monument where theory met stone on an unimaginable scale. On the Giza plateau, the builders faced their greatest challenge, aligning a structure the size of a small mountain to the cardinal directions with an error of just 3/60ths of a degree. To put that in perspective, that is less than the width of a single coin seen from nearly 100 feet away. How could they possibly achieve such exactness? The answer likely lies not in one single method, but in a brilliant, layered strategy that cross-checked the sky itself. One prominent theory suggests a masterful two-step process. First, teams of astronomers would have used the circumpolar stars like Thuban to establish a primary north-south line over many clear nights. This gave them a stellar baseline of remarkable accuracy. But the stars, while precise, have a slight apparent motion over a long season. To correct for any tiny cumulative drift, the engineers may have then turned to the sun at a very specific moment, the autumnal equinox. On that day, when day and night are of equal length, the sun rises due east and sets due west. By carefully bisecting the angle of the equinox sunset and sunrise, they could derive a second, independent north-south reference. By comparing and reconciling the stellar line with the solar line, they could cancel out the minor errors inherent in each method alone, arriving at a final bearing of almost supernatural precision. Yet, even the most perfect line drawn in the sand is useless without a perfectly stable base. Before a single block was set, the builders transformed the Giza plateau itself. They meticulously leveled the entire 13-acre limestone bedrock foundation. Modern surveys show the variation across this vast stone canvas is less than 1 inch. How did they manage this? Archaeologists believe they employed a network of shallow, water-filled trenches cut directly into the bedrock. By flooding these interconnected channels, they created a giant grid of natural spirit levels. The water, seeking its own plane, would reveal the high and low points of the stone. Workers could then painstakingly grind down the high spots until the water sat at a uniform depth across the entire network. Only when the water lay perfectly still and even in every trench was the site declared ready. This case study of the Great Pyramid is a masterclass in ancient engineering philosophy. It was never about a single flash of genius or a secret tool. It was about a systematic, multi-method approach that combined celestial observation with terrestrial preparation. They used the stars for primary guidance, the sun for fine-tuning correction, and the very properties of water and stone to create an unshakable foundation. This layered process of cross-verification is something a modern surveyor would instantly recognize, a testament to a rigorous, scientific mindset existing over 4,000 years ago. They built in redundancy, using the cosmos to check its own work, ensuring that their earthly monument would stand as a true reflection of the heavens. This relentless pursuit of perfection raises a profound question, one that moves us from the how to the why. What drove this obsession with such minute accuracy, an effort that must have consumed immense time and resources? The answer lies not in the stones but in the civilization that raised them. Dawn on Salisbury Plain paints the world in cool, gray light. As the first sliver of sun breaks the horizon, it does not appear at a random point. It rises precisely over the tip of the solitary heel stone, its rays flooding directly down the central avenue of Stonehenge, illuminating the heart of the circle. This moment, repeating every summer solstice, is no cosmic coincidence. It is the signature of a Neolithic civilization that engineered its sacred space in direct conversation with the sun's farthest journey. While the pyramids of Egypt speak of a centralized royal command over celestial alignment, Stonehenge tells a different, equally profound story. Here, precision was a communal project, achieved not in a single lifetime but over centuries, weaving astronomy into the very fabric of the land. The builder's method relied on a powerful yet straightforward principle of surveying, known as foresight and backsight. To establish that perfect solstice line, they likely began by marking the position of the midwinter sunset, perhaps with a simple wooden post. From that point, looking back across the landscape, they could then determine where the midsummer sunrise would occur on the opposite horizon. By placing a second marker, the foresight, at that distant point, they created a permanent sightline spanning miles. The process could then be refined and reversed, using the new marker to check and correct the original. This dance of alignment across vast distances transformed the rolling plain into a giant astronomical instrument. The monument we see today is just the focal point of a much larger scheme. The processional avenue, a wide pathway leading to the circle, is itself aligned to the solstice sunrise. This suggests the entire approach to the site was part of the ritual, designed so that communities moving along it at dawn on the longest day would be walking directly toward the rising sun, their destination perfectly framed by the great stones. This was orientation as a lived experience, embedding celestial timing into the very act of gathering. Achieving this over generations required more than technical skill. it demanded a shared, enduring cultural purpose. Stonehenge served as a colossal calendar and a unifying focal point, a place where the turning of the year could be witnessed and celebrated collectively. A precise alignment guaranteed that the sun would perform its promised drama each year, reinforcing social bonds, agricultural cycles, and a shared worldview. In this way, the stones are not just aligned to the sun, they are aligned to the heartbeat of a community, a testament to what humans can achieve when they look to the sky together across time. This same celestial conversation echoed across the world, in a valley far from the Nile or Salisbury Plain. In central Mexico, the builders of Teotihuacan faced their own horizon, and they made a choice that has puzzled archaeologists for generations. Instead of aligning their great city to the cardinal directions, they laid out the entire metropolis on a precise, deliberate skew. The city's backbone, the Avenue of the Dead, runs not true north but 15.5 degrees east of north. For a long time, this was seen as a simple mistake or a compromise with the local terrain. But we now understand it was no error. It was a masterstroke of intentional design, an alignment to a different kind of celestial marker. The most compelling theory points to the Pleiades, that delicate cluster of stars known across Mesoamerica as a sign of fundamental cosmic cycles. Researchers like Anthony Aveni have shown that from the center of Teotihuacan, the Pleiades would have set directly along the line of the Avenue of the Dead at a key moment in the ancient calendar, around the year when the city's grand construction began. This was not a casual observation. The Pleiades were deeply woven into the agricultural and ceremonial life of the region, their heliacal rising or first appearance before dawn, signaling the start of the growing season. To align an entire city to this star cluster was to root its identity in the rhythm of time and the promise of renewal. But how did they translate that star's setting point into a street plan spanning miles? The engineers likely used the landscape itself as a permanent fixture. They would have observed the Pleiades sinking behind a specific, unmistakable peak on the western horizon. That mountain became their fixed backsite, a natural monument far more stable than any wooden post. By marking the observation point in the valley and then sighting toward that mountain, they could establish an unshakable baseline. Every other structure in the city, from the massive pyramid of the sun to the pyramid of the moon, was then laid out in a perfect grid relative to this primary sacred axis. The entire urban plan became a physical model of their cosmos, with the avenue serving as a terrestrial echo of a celestial path. This case reveals something profound about ancient orientation. It was not just about finding north, it was about finding meaning. The skewed grid of Teotihuacan did not make construction easier, in fact, it made it more complex. Yet it gave the city a unique spiritual signature, distinguishing it from all other places on Earth. The orientation defined its purpose, telling every resident and visitor that they were walking a path laid down by the stars themselves. This deep integration of astronomy, geography, and urban design shows a level of holistic planning that rivals any modern city. It forces us to ask what happens when this hard-won knowledge, this sacred science of alignment, is lost. What occurs in the quiet centuries when the stars are no longer watched so closely and the meaning behind the stones begins to fade? The final stone of a foundation was not just placed, it was born. In ancient societies, the moment of alignment was a sacred threshold, a point where human ambition met divine sanction. The technical act of orienting a monument was never a purely secular engineering task. It was a ritual performance of cosmic significance, choreographed to transform a construction site into a consecrated space. Before a rope was ever stretched or a plumb line hung, there would have been ceremonies, offerings, and prayers. A priest astronomer, watching for a specific star to crest a mountain or the sun to touch a notch in the horizon, was not merely taking a measurement. He was capturing a moment of divine presence, a signal from the gods that the time and the direction were right. The first stake driven into the ground, marking the primary axis, was more than a surveyor's mark. It was a symbolic act of claiming that celestial order for the earthly realm, often accompanied by libations, chants, or the burial of sacred objects beneath the stone. This fusion was essential. The meticulous science of bisecting solar arcs or tracking circumpolar stars was a form of high knowledge, a sacred science preserved and protected within temples and priestly colleges. It was not written in manuals for public use. It was transmitted through initiation and apprenticeship, wrapped in myth and ritual to ensure its faithful preservation across generations. The ruler who commissioned a pyramid or a temple was not just a patron, he was a central actor in this divine drama. By performing the foundation ceremony, often depicted in Egyptian art as the pharaoh stretching the cord alongside the goddess Seshet, he was demonstrating his unique role as the intermediary between the people and the cosmic powers. The precision of the building became proof of his legitimate authority and his favor with the gods. To understand why such staggering effort was devoted to an accuracy of mere fractions of a degree, we must step into this worldview. For them, a misaligned temple was not just an engineering flaw. It was a spiritual failure, a structure that might not function properly in the cosmic order, that might fail to receive the life-giving rays of the sun god at the appointed hour, or whose prayers might go astray. The immense labor was an act of devotion, a physical prayer in stone. This cultural context transforms the monuments from puzzles into statements. They are not just testaments to what ancient people could calculate, but profound evidence of what they believed. The alignment was the contract, written in geometry and astronomy, between a civilization and its universe. Yet, even the most sacred knowledge is not immune to the slow turning of history's wheel. Empires rise and fall, priestly lineages break, and languages fade into silence. What becomes of this hard-won celestial wisdom when the culture that nurtured it begins to change, or when it meets another with a completely different sky? The master's hands were steady as he placed the notched stick against the horizon. Beside him, the apprentice watched, silent, trying to memorize the exact moment when the bright star slipped behind the third notch on the wood. This was the classroom, a wind-swept hill under an open sky, and the lesson was the motion of the heavens itself. The sophisticated techniques for aligning pyramids and temples were never written down in the way we understand today. They lived in the space between a question and an answer, passed from one generation to the next through a sacred chain of memory and practice. This was the Master-Apprentice System, the invisible architecture that supported all the visible stone. Complex astronomical data, the precise timing of equinoxes, the geometric secrets of the 3-4-5 triangle, all of it was stored not in libraries but in people. An elder engineer would teach a younger one through stories, through repeated demonstration, and through hands-on rituals like the stretching of the cord ceremony. The apprentice learned by doing, by feeling the tension in the line that meant a perfect right angle, by witnessing the slow crawl of a star's path over countless nights. This method of transmission was remarkably robust. It allowed for the gradual refinement of knowledge over centuries. A master in the time of the Great Pyramid might pass on a stellar alignment method, and his apprentice, decades later, might discover a solar correction that made it even more precise. That improvement would then become part of the living tradition, woven into the teaching for the next generation. This explains the incredible consistency we see in Egyptian architecture over millennia, a consistency that would have been impossible if each new pharaoh's builders had to rediscover celestial mechanics from scratch. The knowledge was a living, growing science, adapted and honed with each new project, yet always anchored to core principles first observed in deep antiquity. It was a conversation across time, where the voice of a long-gone master could still guide the hand of a modern builder through the accumulated wisdom of the chain. This intimate, human-scale transfer ensured that the deepest meanings behind the alignments were preserved alongside the technical steps. the apprentice learned not just how to mark the solstice sunrise, but why it was sacred, why that particular moment mattered to the community and the cosmos. The technique and its spiritual significance were taught as one inseparable whole. This system was the guardian of precision, but it was also its greatest vulnerability. For when that chain was broken, when wars, famine, or cultural change severed the line of masters and apprentices, an entire universe of understanding could vanish into silence almost overnight, leaving behind only the mute, perfectly aligned stones, waiting for a future age to wonder at their purpose. Even the most flawless stone holds a whisper of the earth's movement. For all their celestial precision, ancient monuments are not sterile, perfect objects frozen in time. They are living testaments to a dialogue between human intention and the physical world, a world that subtly, inevitably pushes back. If we look closely at the Great Pyramid, we find its sides are not perfectly straight. They have a gentle, concave curve, a feature known as the pyramid's concavity. This was likely an intentional design to counteract the visual illusion of sagging, a brilliant optical correction. But we also see that the base is not a perfect square. Its sides vary by a few inches in length. At Stonehenge, some of the massive sarsen stones lean slightly after millennia of settlement. These minor deviations are not failures, they are the signature of reality, the necessary tolerances within which the master builders work. Their tools, while ingenious, had physical limits. A long, taut surveying cord could stretch or sag on a windy day. The water in their leveling trenches would ripple with a breeze. The bedrock they leveled, though seemingly solid, could compress under thousands of tons of stone over decades of construction. Even their celestial guides were not fixed. The Earth's axis slowly wobbles in a 26,000-year cycle called precession, meaning the pole star they used, Theban, has drifted from its position over the centuries. What was true north for the pyramid builders is not exactly true north for us today. Furthermore, the atmosphere itself bends light, a phenomenon known as refraction. When an Egyptian priest marked the moment a star touched the horizon, he was seeing it slightly out of its true position, displaced by the air itself. All of these factors, from the microscopic give in a linen rope to the grand cosmic drift of the stars, introduced tiny, cumulative errors. The genius of these engineers lay in understanding and managing these tolerances. Their goal was not the abstract, digital perfection we can achieve with satellites and lasers. It was a functional and symbolic precision that served its purpose. A temple aligned to the solstice sunrise did not need to be accurate to 1/1000th of a degree to achieve its dramatic effect. As long as the sun burst through the designated doorway and lit up the inner sanctuary, the ritual was a success. The alignment was spiritually potent, agriculturally reliable, and politically powerful. Recognizing these natural and human constraints transforms these monuments from objects of alien mystery into the crowning achievements of a specific time and technology. We see not infallible magicians, but supremely skilled problem solvers who pushed the materials and knowledge available to them to their absolute limit. They worked in conversation with a living, breathing, shifting world, and the slight imperfections we can measure today are simply the echo of that conversation, a reminder that their greatest triumph was not defying nature, but collaborating with it so masterfully that their work has endured for ages. The true north of Egypt was not the true north of China. While the pyramid builders gazed upward, charting the unwavering paths of stars to anchor their monuments to the celestial pole, master planners in ancient China were looking down, reading the living breath of the landscape itself. This reveals a fascinating divergence in global philosophy, where the very definition of precise orientation split along a fundamental line: the quest for cosmic fixity versus the art of environmental harmony. In the West, particularly in Egypt and later in classical traditions, we see an obsession with cardinal directions, a desire to align structures with the abstract, perfect grid of the universe. True north was a mathematical ideal, a point to be discovered through astronomy and imposed upon the earth, regardless of the local hills or valleys. It was about connecting to a realm beyond, a permanent, transcendent order. In the east, a different system held sway, one known as Feng Shui, the art of placement. Here, orientation was not about fixed stars, but about flowing energy or Kai. The goal was not to impose an external grid, but to integrate a structure seamlessly into the local environment's dynamic patterns, to harness the beneficial flows and deflect the harmful ones. A master of Feng Shui would carefully assess the landforms, the dragon veins of mountain ranges, the protective embrace of hills, and the nourishing path of waterways. The ideal site, often called the cosmic chair, would have a protective mountain at its back, lower hills to the sides like armrests, and an open, water-fed vista to the front. Orientation was thus relative and adaptive, a negotiation with the immediate terrain rather than a decree from the distant sky. The magnificent Forbidden City in Beijing beautifully embodies this synthesis. While its primary axis is aligned to a north-south cardinal direction, honoring imperial symbolism and solar movement, its entire layout is a masterpiece of geomancy. It sits with the Jingshan Hill to its north, a human-made mound created from the earth dug to form its moats, serving as a protective barrier against malevolent northern winds and influences. The complex's intricate arrangement of courtyards, gates, and halls follows precise principles to channel beneficial Kai for the emperor and the stability of the state. Water features were strategically placed, and the placement of every significant building was calculated to maintain balance with the surrounding forces. This was precision of a different kind, measured not in fractions of a degree from celestial north, but in perceived harmony and energetic potency. So was one approach more advanced than the other? That is the wrong question. Both represent supremely sophisticated responses to the same human urge to situate ourselves meaningfully within a larger order. The Egyptian pyramid declares, "We have mastered the timeless heavens and brought that perfection to earth." The Chinese palace whispers, "We have listened to the spirit of this specific place and built in accord with its wisdom." One looks to the constants of the cosmos, the other to the variables of the landscape. This global diversity of thought shows that our ancestors were not following a single universal manual. They were interpreting the language of the universe through different cultural grammars, writing their answers in stone and earth, each seeking a different kind of perfect alignment with the world as they understood it. So we return to the toolbox, the tangible link between the human mind and the monumental stone. The true sophistication of ancient engineering was not in the complexity of its tools, but in the profound understanding of how to use them. Their toolkit was a masterpiece of elegant minimalism, each instrument designed to harness a fundamental force or a simple geometric truth. The most universal was the gnomon, a simple vertical stick. By tracking the moving tip of its shadow across the day and across the seasons, an observer could map the sun's entire journey, deriving not only the cardinal directions but also the precise dates of solstices and equinoxes. This unassuming rod was in effect a solar computer, its data written in light and shadow on the ground. For the night sky, the Egyptians developed a more specialized device, the merkhet. This instrument was the ancient world's theodolite. It consisted of a horizontal palm rib with a vertical slit cut into it, attached to a wooden stand. A second component was a simple plumb line. An astronomer, known as a horizon watcher, would use the slit in the palm rib to precisely sight a specific star as it crossed the meridian, the imaginary north-south line in the sky. His assistant would then use the plumb line to mark the exact vertical alignment of that sighting on the ground. By repeating this observation with a different star or from a different position, they could triangulate a perfect north-south axis with remarkable accuracy. This tool transformed a star's fleeting passage into a permanent terrestrial line. For creating the vast, flat plains required for pyramid bases, they turned to water's unerring search for level. The tool was a simple trench or a pair of connected vessels. By filling a channel with water and marking the height of the surface at multiple points, workers could establish a perfectly horizontal plane across acres of uneven bedrock. Where the water touched the stone, they would make a mark and then painstakingly grind down everything above that line. This patient process, repeated thousands of times, gave them a foundation as flat as a still pond. And finally, there were the measuring cords, the ropes of the Harpedonapti. These were not ordinary ropes. They were carefully crafted, treated to resist stretching, and knotted at precise, sacred intervals. Using the timeless principles of the 3-4-5 triangle, these cords could generate perfect right angles and true straight lines over long distances. They were the living geometry of the site, the physical manifestation of mathematical truth. Some researchers speculate that this toolkit may have been supplemented by more advanced, now lost items. Could highly polished copper plates have been used as mirrors to reflect and align sunlight over long distances? Might long, narrow sighting tubes, perhaps made of hollow reeds, have been employed to isolate a single star from the glittering background of the night sky, improving observational precision? While we have no archaeological evidence for these specific objects, their proposed use aligns perfectly with the innovative spirit of the age. The overarching lesson here is one of intelligent application, not magical technology. These builders did not have lasers or GPS. What they had was a deep, patient knowledge of physics, astronomy, and geometry, applied through tools that were perfectly suited to extract reliable data from the world around them. They understood that a weighted string will always point down, that water will always find its level, and that a triangle with sides in a 3-4-5 ratio will always contain a perfect right angle. Their genius was in weaving these simple, unshakable truths into a process that could square a building to the stars. This demystifies their achievement, placing it firmly within the realm of human ingenuity. It was not alien intervention or a lost super science, but the cumulative brilliance of generations of observers, thinkers, and craftsmen, all working with the most reliable tools they could devise, the laws of nature themselves. Geometry was the silent, intellectual engine behind the physical labor. While priests watched the heavens and laborers moved the stones, it was a deep, practical grasp of geometry that translated celestial visions into terrestrial blueprints. This was not the abstract geometry of a classroom, but a living, hands-on science of shapes and angles, discovered and perfected through generations of trial, observation, and sheer necessity. The entire enterprise of monumental alignment rested on a few powerful geometric operations, mastered long before they were given formal names. At its heart was the simple, profound act of bisection. Finding true east-west from the sun's path was a geometric exercise. By marking the extreme shadows of the solstices, the builders were defining the endpoints of an arc. The precise midpoint between those 2 points gave them the equinox line, a perfect east-west axis. Bisecting that line or constructing a perpendicular to it yielded true north-south. This process of having angles and creating perpendiculars is fundamental geometry in action, a way of deriving order from apparent chaos using nothing more than stakes, chords, and a keen eye for symmetry. But the most famous example is, of course, the right angle. Creating a perfect 90-degree corner for a pyramid's base is not something you can eyeball at a scale of hundreds of feet. This is where the rope stretchers and their knotted cords performed their magic, by forming a triangle with sides in the ratio of 3, 4, and 5. They were employing a Pythagorean triple. When the sides are in that proportion, the angle between the 3 and 4 unit sides is guaranteed to be a perfect right angle. This empirical knowledge, likely discovered through centuries of rope working and carpentry, provided an infallible factory for square corners. They didn't need to know the theorem as a written formula, they knew the rule as a physical truth, a reliable recipe embedded in their most basic tool. This geometric thinking extended to circular structures as well. Laying out a monument like Stonehenge required consistent diameters and radii. One simple method involves a central stake and a fixed-length rope. By keeping the rope taut and walking a circle, you can create a near-perfect ring. But to then place massive stones at specific points around that circle, like the 30 stones of the Sarsen ring, requires dividing the circumference. This could be achieved through iterative geometry, perhaps by inscribing hexagons or other polygons within the circle, using chords to step out equal chords. The Aubrey holes, the ring of pits just inside Stonehenge's bank, may have served as a geometric template for such calculations, a permanent construction diagram etched into the chalk. This practical mathematics provided the logical framework that made the mystical tangible. It turned the sweeping arc of a star's path into a series of discrete, measurable points on the ground. The sky gave the direction, but geometry gave it scale, proportion, and repeatable accuracy. It was the indispensable intermediary, the set of rules that allowed a civilization to agree on what straight and square and centered meant, and to enforce that agreement across a massive worksite for decades. This shared geometric language meant that an architect's vision drawn in the sand could be understood and executed by thousands of workers, ensuring that the first stone and the last stone were part of a single, coherent idea. But how do we move from admiring these alignments to truly understanding their intent? This is where the modern science of archaeoastronomy enters the scene, a powerful fusion of archaeology and astronomy that acts as a translator for these ancient conversations with the sky. Pioneered by researchers like Anthony Aveni, this field does not rely on romantic speculation. Instead, it applies rigorous statistical analysis to the stones themselves. The central challenge is a profound one. How do you prove that an alignment is deliberate and meaningful, and not just a random accident of geography? To answer this, scientists began surveying not just one monument, but hundreds. By mapping the orientations of temples, tombs, and stone circles across a wide region, they could look for statistical patterns. If a significant majority of structures in a culture consistently face toward, say, the winter solstice sunrise, that clustering is powerful evidence of a shared cultural rule, a deliberate architectural canon. This data-driven approach filters out the noise of coincidence, revealing the clear signal of human intention. Modern technology grants these researchers a kind of time machine. Using sophisticated planetarium software, they can digitally wind back the clock, reconstructing the precise night sky as it appeared over a specific hill in England 3,000 years ago, or above the Mexican desert at the dawn of Teotihuacan. They can then test specific hypotheses. If a temple's doorway is aligned to a certain azimuth, which celestial body, if any, would have risen or set there during the era of construction? This process has confirmed many long-held theories and overturned others, grounding our interpretations in celestial mechanics rather than guesswork. Perhaps the most compelling discovery from this scientific lens is the emergence of universal patterns. Across continents and cultures with no possible contact, from the stone rings of Britain to the sun temples of the Andes, we find a recurring fascination with the solstices. The longest and shortest days of the year held a primal significance, serving as reliable, observable anchors in the cyclical flow of time. This suggests a shared human response to the cosmos, a common impulse to mark these celestial turning points as fundamental to life, agriculture, and ritual. Archaeoastronomy does not diminish the mystery of these places, it deepens it. By providing evidence-based answers, it transforms vague wonder into specific insight. We are no longer just saying the stones are aligned to the sun. We can now say with confidence which sun, on which day, and within what cultural framework that alignment likely held meaning. This scientific dialogue with the past allows the silent stones to speak in a language we are finally learning to decipher, revealing a chapter of human history written not in words, but in the deliberate angle of a wall to the rising light of a specific morning. Yet this clarity of evidence has not stopped the human imagination from filling the gaps with more spectacular stories. When faced with the immense scale and precision of these sites, a persistent narrative emerges, one that suggests our ancestors must have had help from beyond this world, or access to a technology now lost to history. These theories are undeniably captivating, speaking to a deep-seated wonder about our past. They propose that the pyramids were built with alien lasers, or that Stonehenge's stones were levitated with sonic devices from a forgotten advanced civilization. The allure is in the simplicity of the answer. It bypasses the complex human story of trial, error, and generational learning. However, these speculations, while engaging, almost always do one thing: they profoundly underestimate the people of the past. They overlook the vast body of archaeological evidence showing the quarries, the worker settlements, the trial and error prototypes, and the gradual evolution of architectural styles. They dismiss the documented ingenuity of tools like the merkhet, the water level, and the knotted cord, tools we have found and can demonstrate are perfectly capable of the tasks at hand. To claim extraterrestrial intervention is, in a way, to rob those ancient engineers of their greatest achievement, their own brilliant, hard-won mastery over their environment. A more substantive and ongoing debate exists not in the fringe, but within the academic community itself. Here, the controversy is often a matter of interpretation, not of fact. When an ancient temple doorway frames a sliver of horizon, which celestial body was it designed to capture? One researcher, analyzing the precise azimuth, might argue convincingly for the rising sun at the summer solstice. Another, using a different astronomical reconstruction, might propose it was aligned to the helical rising of the star Sirius, an event of great importance in the Egyptian calendar. A third might see a lunar alignment, tracking the moon's more complex 18.6-year cycle. These scholarly disagreements are not a sign of weakness in the theory of ancient astronomy. They are a sign of its richness and complexity. They remind us that these sites likely served multiple, overlapping purposes. A single alignment could mark a solar event, a stellar event, and a sacred geographical feature all at once. The true story is not diminished by this debate, it is deepened by it. It shows us a past where observation was nuanced, where meaning was layered, and where the sky was read like a dense, multifaceted text. By steering the conversation back to the evidence, the tools, and the cultural context, we find a narrative far more compelling than any fictionalized speculation. It is the story of human curiosity itself, of countless eyes turned upward, patiently mapping the cosmos, and of countless hands turning that celestial map into a legacy of stone. This journey of discovery invites us to look at these monuments not as alien puzzles, but as the ultimate expressions of a shared human impulse to find our place in the grand scheme of things. The clarity of the desert night was not a universal gift. For every Egyptian astronomer tracing the crisp circle of Theban, there was a builder in Britain squinting through a morning mist, hoping for a glimpse of the solstice sun. The very atmosphere through which they observed the heavens was not a neutral window, but a variable lens that shaped their methods and, ultimately, their monuments. Local environmental conditions became a silent partner in every alignment project, demanding a flexible, practical intelligence from the engineers who worked within them. In the bone-dry air of the Egyptian desert, with over 300 clear nights a year, the stars were a reliable, unwavering clock. This allowed for the meticulous, long-term stellar observations that gave the pyramids their celestial precision. But transplant those methods to the cloud-frequent highlands of Britain or the humid jungles of Mesoamerica, and they would falter. A culture that could only see the sun or stars for a few days each month needed a different strategy. This is where we see true engineering adaptability. In places like ancient Mesoamerica, where the wet season could obscure the sky for weeks, builders learned to use the landscape itself as a permanent, weatherproof reference. A distant, distinctive mountain peak does not vanish in the mist. It remains a fixed point on the horizon. By aligning their cities and temples to such terrestrial markers, which themselves corresponded to key solar or stellar events on the few clear days, they created a system that was resilient to daily weather. The entire skewed orientation of Teotihuacan may be a brilliant adaptation to a less predictable sky, locking their sacred geometry into the unchanging bones of the earth. Even in clearer climates, subtle atmospheric effects were noticed and likely used. Near the equator, the sun's path is nearly straight overhead, casting minimal, rapidly moving shadows. This demanded different gnomon techniques than in higher latitudes, where the sun's lower arc creates long, sweeping shadows that are easier to measure with precision. Some researchers have speculated that keen-eyed observers might have even noted rare optical phenomena, like the so-called green flash that can occur just as the sun dips below a very clear horizon. While not a reliable daily tool, witnessing such a vivid, predictable color at the exact moment of sunset could have reinforced the significance of that solar event, deepening its ceremonial importance. This environmental pragmatism showcases a fundamental truth about these builders. They were not rigidly applying a textbook. They were problem solvers, intimately engaged with their specific patch of earth and sky. They asked, what does our location allow us to see reliably? And then they built their science around that answer. A misty horizon was not a barrier. It was a design constraint that led to the innovation of mountain alignments. A frequently cloudy season was not an obstacle. It was a scheduling directive that focused observation efforts on the clearest times of year. This responsive, localized approach meant that the quest for cosmic order was always grounded in earthly reality, a dialogue between human aspiration and the tangible world that breathed around them. Precision on this scale was never the work of a lone genius. It was a symphony of thousands, a colossal social endeavor that transformed celestial vision into physical reality. Behind every perfectly placed stone stood an army of laborers, overseers, and coordinators, a society organized enough to turn a sacred blueprint into a mountain of granite. The true alignment was not just between stone and star, but between the minds and muscles of an entire civilization. Translating a priest's sighting of a star into the quarrying of a 200-ton block of limestone was a feat of communication as impressive as the astronomy itself. The master engineer who understood the celestial target had to convey that intangible line to the foreman at the quarry miles away. This was likely done through a chain of trusted deputies using simple but effective tools. A wooden model or a diagram scratched in clay might show the required dimensions and angles. More importantly, the baseline direction, once established at the temple site, would have been replicated using the same rope and stake methods at the quarry. Teams could then work knowing that the block they were freeing from the earth was already destined to face true north. The overseer's shout and the worker's heave were as vital to the alignment as the merkhet and the plumb line. This level of coordination required a society with a clear hierarchy and a surplus of resources. Farmers, during the Nile's inundation when fields were flooded, could be mobilized for state projects. They were not slaves in chains, but often conscripted laborers or skilled artisans who were fed, housed, and organized into work gangs with telling names like the Vigorous Gang or the Enduring Gang. This temporary shift from agricultural to monumental labor was only possible because the centralized authority, typically the pharaoh and his priests, controlled enough grain, water, and administrative skill to support a non-food producing workforce for decades. The precise orientation of the final monument, therefore, stands as the ultimate proof of social cohesion. It demonstrated a society's ability to agree on a goal, to communicate complex ideas across vast distances and social strata, and to sustain a shared vision across generations. Every perfectly squared corner was a testament to trust, that the man cutting the stone in the quarry believed in the same unseen line as the man setting it in place 500 years later. This fusion of technical, spiritual, and political purpose is what made these projects possible. The spiritual goal provided the unwavering motivation. The political structure provided the organization and resources, and the technical knowledge passed from master to apprentice provided the method. The alignment was the physical intersection of all three, a point in stone where heaven's order, royal authority, and human toil met. To see the Great Pyramid is not just to see a building, it is to see a civilization's ability to dream together, to pool its collective will, and to etch that shared dream permanently onto the face of the earth. A weighted string still points down and water still seeks its level. These were not just ancient truths, they are the foundational principles of modern engineering. The tools have evolved from simple rope and wood to gleaming metal and laser light, but the fundamental goal remains identical: to establish a true vertical and a perfect horizontal plane. The plumb bob, that humble stone or lead weight on a string, is the direct ancestor of every device we use to find down. Its modern descendant is the optical plummet, a precision instrument in a theodolite that uses a focused beam of light instead of a physical weight to project a perfect vertical line from the instrument down to a survey point on the ground. The principle of gravity as the ultimate reference is exactly the same. Similarly, the ancient water level, a trench or connected vessels, finds its echo in the modern spirit level and the laser level. Instead of peering at the surface of water in a ditch, a builder today looks at a bubble trapped in a vial of liquid or watches a rotating laser beam paint a perfectly level line across a wall. The technology is more convenient and precise, but the core idea of using a fluid's natural tendency to find equilibrium as the definition of level is a direct inheritance. Even the word we use to describe this entire practice, orientation, carries the weight of this legacy. It comes from the Latin oriens, meaning east. For centuries in Europe, a primary act of building a church was to orient it, to align its altar or main axis toward the rising sun in the east, toward the Holy Land. This sacred alignment was a deliberate echo of those ancient solstice markers, a continuation of the practice of weaving cosmic direction into architectural purpose. Every time a surveyor sets up a tripod or a contractor checks a foundation with a laser, they are participating in a tradition millennia old. The challenges those ancient engineers overcame, the patient years of observation, the ingenious adaptations to their environment, they form the bedrock, quite literally, upon which the modern sciences of cartography and civil engineering were built. Our ability to map continents, to build bridges that span miles, and to align skyscrapers that scrape the clouds, all stem from those first attempts to make a stone circle square with the sun or a pyramid face the pole star. By understanding their journey, we see our own tools not as sterile gadgets, but as the latest chapter in a very long conversation between human ambition and the immutable laws of the physical world. Even the most famous alignments are not closed cases. For every pyramid whose secrets we feel we have unlocked, there exists another monument that stubbornly refuses to give up its full meaning, its method of orientation remaining a vibrant and contentious debate. Take the immense Nazca lines of Peru, sprawling geoglyphs etched into the desert plateau. Some of the long, straight lines stretch for miles with arrow-straight precision, a feat that seems to demand sophisticated surveying. Yet, establishing their purpose and how they were aligned has divided researchers for decades. Some see clear astronomical alignments, with lines pointing to solstice sunrises or significant star clusters on the horizon. Others argue persuasively that many lines actually point toward sources of water or ancient pathways used in ritual processions. The truth likely intertwines both, a complex tapestry of practical hydrology and celestial observation that we are still learning to read. Similarly, the enigmatic moai of Easter Island, with their backs to the sea, were once thought to be randomly placed. Modern surveys, however, reveal that many of the great stone platforms, or ahu, upon which they stand are carefully oriented. Some align with the rising point of specific stars important to Polynesian navigation, while others may be positioned to mark the equinoxes. The debate continues because the island's culture experienced profound change before its methods could be fully recorded, leaving us with the monumental questions literally set in stone. This is where the story of ancient alignment becomes not just about the past, but about the present moment of discovery. For every solved mystery, new and deeper questions arise, and our tools for asking them are growing more powerful. Current research is being revolutionized by technologies like LiDAR, which uses laser pulses to see through dense jungle canopy. In places like the Maya lowlands of Guatemala, LiDAR has revealed entire cities previously unknown, complete with causeways, plazas, and pyramids. Researchers can now analyze the urban plans of these lost metropolises from above, searching for patterns of alignment across a whole landscape rather than just a single temple. They are finding that what looked like isolated structures are often part of a vast, interconnected grid oriented to sacred directions or celestial events. This technology allows us to re-examine even famous sites with fresh eyes and greater precision, measuring alignments to fractions of a degree and modeling the ancient sky with unprecedented accuracy. Each new scan, each new data point, adds another piece to the grand puzzle. It reminds us that our understanding of ancient engineering is not a static textbook, but a living, evolving field. The quest to fully comprehend their methods is an active and exciting frontier, a collaboration between archaeologists, astronomers, engineers, and historians. Every time a researcher proposes a new theory for how the Nazca lines were surveyed, or uses drone mapping to confirm a solstitial alignment at a remote site, we are participating in that same ancient conversation between humanity and the cosmos. We are using our own stars, satellites in space, and lasers in the air to listen more closely to what the stones have been trying to tell us all along. This ongoing journey of discovery suggests that the most profound alignment of all may be between our enduring curiosity and their timeless ingenuity. The silent stones spoke a language every citizen could understand. Beyond the ropes and plumb lines, the true purpose of this meticulous alignment was to communicate, to embed a civilization's deepest beliefs into the very posture of its architecture. A pyramid facing true north was not merely a geometric feat. It was a profound statement about cosmic order, declaring that human authority was rooted in the same unwavering principles that governed the stars. This orientation was a form of non-verbal language, as rich and complex as any written text, conveying worldview, priority, and sacred relationship without uttering a single word. Consider the solstice-aligned temple. Its doorway, framing the first light of the longest day, was not just a clever trick of light. It was a public, undeniable announcement of a connection to the cycle of seasons, to the gods of agriculture and renewal. For the community that gathered there, the annual spectacle reaffirmed a covenant with nature itself. The building's alignment said, "We understand the rhythm of life, and we have built a house where that rhythm becomes visible." It transformed abstract celestial mechanics into a shared, visceral experience, reinforcing social bonds and a collective identity tied to the land and the sky. This architectural language was also a powerful tool of politics and devotion. A ruler who aligned his capital or his tomb with celestial authority was making a bold claim. He was positioning himself, and by extension his entire reign, as an integral part of the cosmic framework. The perfect orientation became proof of divine favor and legitimate power, a permanent stone decree that outlasted any living herald. Similarly, for centuries, Christian churches were deliberately oriented with their altars toward the east, toward the rising sun, and symbolically toward Jerusalem. This practice was a direct inheritance of ancient solar alignment, repurposed to express a new spiritual geography. Every worshipper entering that space would subconsciously understand the direction of prayer and the symbolic journey toward holy light, all communicated by the building's fixed stance. Decoding this symbolic language is therefore just as critical as reverse engineering the surveying techniques. The how reveals their ingenious minds, but the why reveals their hearts and their hierarchies. It answers the fundamental question of why such immense effort was devoted to fractions of a degree. The precision was not for its own sake. It was the necessary cost of making the symbol legible and trustworthy. A slightly misaligned solstice marker would fail its promise, breaking the covenant with the people and the gods. The alignment had to be perfect because the message had to be perfect, an immutable truth set in stone for eternity. This transforms our view of these sites from impressive engineering projects into chapters of a grand, global story, where every culture was writing its own philosophy of existence onto the canvas of the earth, using the silent, steadfast vocabulary of direction. You can actually feel this ancient patience in your own hands. Take a straight stick, perhaps a broom handle or a garden stake, and push it firmly into a patch of level ground in the morning. Place a small stone or a coin at the very tip of its shadow. Then wait, come back in an hour, and place another marker at the new shadow's tip. The arc you begin to trace across the earth is the same arc an Egyptian priest or a Neolithic farmer would have watched, the sun's daily journey written in miniature. If you continue this through the afternoon, connecting your markers will reveal a gentle curve. The shortest shadow of the day, when the sun is highest, points roughly north in the northern hemisphere. That simple line, derived from nothing more than a stick and sunlight, is the foundational act of celestial surveying. It requires no technology, only observation and time. This exercise makes the abstract brilliantly concrete. You are not just learning about the gnomon, you are using it. You feel the impatience of waiting for the shadow to move, the need for a steady hand to place the marker just right, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing the pattern emerge from chaos. Suddenly, the ancient engineer's achievement shifts from a mythical feat to a human-scale skill, built on the cumulative power of countless such careful observations. This hands-on connection bridges 4,000 years in an instant. The frustration of a cloudy afternoon that ruins your data gives you a new respect for the desert's clear skies that enabled Egyptian precision. The slight wobble in your stick makes you appreciate the stable, stone-built observation platforms they would have constructed. It demystifies the process, revealing it not as lost magic, but as applied attention. By physically engaging with the same principles of light and shadow, you step into a timeless loop of discovery. You are participating in the same fundamental act of inquiry that led to the world's great monuments, reminding us that the urge to map our place in the cosmos begins with a single look upward and a single mark on the ground. The ancient engineer stood at the intersection of everything. He was not a specialist in our modern sense, but a master of synthesis, weaving separate threads of knowledge into a single, unbreakable cord. This was the true secret, not a lost tool or an alien blueprint, but the interconnected web of sky, land, and human mind. Precise orientation was the final product of a holistic process, where celestial observation met terrestrial adaptation, where sacred geometry met social organization, and where a deep cultural purpose directed every physical effort. The astronomer's star map was useless without the mathematician's 3-4-5 triangle. The priest's solstice ritual was an empty gesture without the project manager's ability to feed and direct thousands of workers for decades. The water level's perfect plane meant nothing unless the quarrymen understood the angle of the block they were cutting. Each element relied on the others, forming a complete system of knowledge and action. This synthesis transformed abstract cosmic order into tangible reality. It allowed a society to take something as vast and intangible as the path of the sun and imprint it permanently onto the earth, to turn a vision of harmony into a mountain of stone that would stand for millennia. The monuments we study are not merely buildings, they are the physical echoes of this integrated worldview, where every discipline spoke to the others in a shared language of alignment. Their enduring legacy, therefore, is not just in the stones themselves, but in the powerful reminder they offer us. They testify to what humanity can achieve when we observe the world with patient curiosity, when we apply reason to our observations, and when we organize our collective efforts around a shared, meaningful goal. It is a call to remember that our greatest accomplishments often arise not from a single flash of genius, but from the careful, collaborative weaving together of many different kinds of knowing. From the silent plains of Giza to the windswept circles of Salisbury, these stones tell a single, unified story. It is not merely a story of how to build, but of why to build with such exacting care. The quest for precise orientation, witnessed across continents and millennia, reveals a universal human drive, a deep-seated need to find our place in the cosmos and to make that understanding permanent. We have walked alongside those ancient engineers, seeing how they used nothing more than keen observation, simple tools like the plumb line and the knotted cord, and a profound, generational dedication to achieve alignments that still command our respect. Their monuments are far more than tombs or temples. They stand as enduring bridges between the earthly and the celestial, between human ambition and the unwavering laws of nature. Each perfectly placed stone is a testament to a dialogue, a conversation our ancestors insisted on having with the universe. As modern science, from archaeoastronomy to lidar scanning, continues to peel back the layers of their methods, we do more than solve historical puzzles. We reconnect with a fundamental thread of human ingenuity, the patient, collaborative spirit that turns observation into knowledge and knowledge into legacy. Their work invites us to look up, to wonder, and to remember that the greatest human achievements often begin with a simple question asked of the sky. If this journey into the minds of ancient builders has sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear your thoughts. Which ancient alignment fascinates you the most? Share your reflections in the comments.